Okay, I would like to welcome and introduce Mr. Amnon Ben Yahuda, a dear friend who has had a truly remarkable life experience. In 1952, he graduated from the University of California at Berkeley, coming from the newly independent state of Israel. On graduation, he went to work for NCR, rising to the highest levels of management as a GM of the Special Projects Division, and then the Micrographics Division. He retired, and that was by no means the end of his work. He is a community servant, what we would call in restorative terms, a community builder. Has many talents, including classical violin. He still plays weekly for benefit of friends. And he's a gifted photographer. He's had a one-man show showing pictures of people on the streets of Israel. He's been on, he's lent his leadership experience to countless boards and committees of various nonprofit organizations, very active in the Rotary Club and Rotary International, been working for, I think, a couple of decades on a program to educate and ensure the vaccination of infants. But the story really starts over 90 years ago in what was then Palestine. Amnon, at age 14, joined the Haganah Underground, whose purpose was to fight for the free state of Israel. He was 17 when the United Nations declared Israel an independent state. And at that time, 17 years of age, he joined the Palmach, which was the tip of the spear, if you will, the shock troops of the Haganah, and the bullets started to fly. He was engaged shortly after the start of the war in a historic battle in the upper Galilee at a place called Neba Yusha. Flashing forward to age 87, he decided to write a book. Central to the book is the battle just discussed and its effect on him in terms of what actually happened in the battle and his life from that point forward. So it is with great pleasure that I ask you, Amnon, what at 87 years old motivated you to write this book?
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for being here and having a conversation with you, and particularly on this subject that's very dear to me. What motivated me? Well, I have been through a journey in my own life, an unusual journey. First, as a young man, I was involved in the War of Independence in Israel in 1947-48. So I was on an unusual journey. At 17, I was 18, basically, just 18 plus a few months old, when I was involved in this, what we call today, a historic battle. That was in April 1948. I was into combat as of November 29, 1947, when the United Nations declared war, declared the establishment of the State of Israel. And on that day, basically, the hostilities began, and I was into war, okay? So by the time we went to this action in April, I was already a pretty seasoned guy. I've been through some very demanding, if you will, actions, and survived them all scratch-free. And in this case, again, we had a very, I won't go into the details of the operation. It was a night operation, and we failed for one reason or another, and we lost a total on that action 22 men. 12 of them were members of our own group, and I have to emphasize now that our group was unique, because when I joined the Palmach, I joined it together with my buddies, kids that I grew up with in the Scouts movement, so that we were already a bonded group. Now we lost 12 of them in one shot, and that was a real shock. And I mean, 12 out of the 20, I'm sorry, 12 of the 22 were from our own group, the immediate group, kids that I grew up with. Our parents knew each other, one another. Their bodies were found in the field after the war, a month later, after the place was captured. They were in pairs. One guy was wounded, another guy tried to rescue him, and both of them got killed. So they were literally found in pairs. I ended up being the only guy that was successfully rescued. I was shot in the head. Bullet hit me somewhere around here, and went into coma immediately. I was in coma for 8 days. So everything I'm telling you about this and what happened is what I ultimately learned in my life. My recruits on that action, they're fresh guys. They were inexperienced, untrained. I got command over them just 1 day earlier. I didn't even know, I hardly knew their names. All right. And they were panicked. They didn't think I was dead. Fortunately, one of our buddies passed by. His name was Aronchik. And he saw me, and he made sure that I would be rescued. Aronchik and I were friends from kindergarten, age 4. All right. We went to kindergarten together. I used to go to his house to play with his toys because he had plenty of toys and I didn't, you know? I mean, and then we were in school together and in Scouts together. And that was the kind of group we were, all right? I'm looking at, I still have our picture from the kindergarten, and I identify a bunch of guys like that, you know, that I've known throughout life. So anyway, it was a miracle that I was rescued from the battlefield. But then the story began. It took 72 hours to get me to a hospital. For the first 48 hours, from the field, I was rescued from the field to a settlement called Ramot Naftali, about a mile or so away from the place. So they carried me to there and left me there because they didn't think they could successfully carry me down the mountain to 2,000 feet, just going, you know, not going, literally going down a mountain. So they left me there, and it turns out later on I discovered, and that was a drama also, and it's all in my book, okay? Here, my book.
Healing the Wounds of War.
Healing the Wounds of War. It's all there. So I discovered there were 2, I call them young ladies, untrained. Maybe they knew how to fix a cut, you know, and they had no equipment to deal with. And they kept watch around me around the clock. And they kept me alive by keeping me hydrated, by using damp rags and squeezing a drop of water into my mouth and keeping my mouth and my tongue wet. This is a story I learned 40 years later. Okay, and I met them 40 years later. And after I met them, when I came back, you see this gold chain I'm wearing? I gave each one of them the same gold chain. Right? And that 2 nights later, our guys climbed up the mountain again to bring supplies to this place and to evacuate the 9 babies that were there under age 2. Evacuate them because the place was under siege. They were surprised to find me alive. There was a discussion of mercy killing because they did not think they could carry me down, particularly at night, down the mountain. But, well, they finally decided to put me on a stretcher, and 8 guys carried me down the mountain, and successfully. And there was another event of almost that. When they got me down to a kibbutz called Ayelet HaShachar, which was the main kibbutz in the upper Galilee of Israel. And that I learned from a book that a friend of mine wrote years later, a lady, and she was there. And she wrote a major book about the whole period. And she described how she saw me brought on a stretcher and placed on the floor there, on the ground, and someone checking me out and covering my face. And she ran over, she uncovered my face, and she found a pulse. And she called the doctor right away. And whatever they did at that point, gave me a shot or I don't know what. From there, I was carried to a hospital in near Tel Aviv, a Bellinson hospital in a place called Petach Tikva. Okay. There was another miracle. One of the world's greatest neurosurgeon was waiting for me. Dr. Hardan Ashkenazi. He just arrived in the country as a Holocaust survivor. Just arrived. He was in the late 30s. He was trained in the best universities in Eastern United States, and then returned to Romania and became the chief neurosurgeon in their great, whatever main hospital, and ended up surviving the Holocaust. And he arrived in a refugee boat to Israel. And he checked me out. And Friday morning, and that was the day, the Erev Pesach, on Friday morning, he operated on me. It was a 6-hour operation. He basically opened my skull here about 4 by 4 and removed the bone, and then cleaned whatever blood that was clotted and dressing over the brain, and just put the skin back on. And after surgery, it gave me 0.5% chance of making it. 0.5%. Wow. All right. Keep going.
I mean, I've
Man, when I was
discussed this with you, it takes my breath away every time I hear that.
And then I started waking up, and this is where I start the book, Waking Up. Trying to make a long story, I made a remarkable recovery once, but what I found myself, for a while, my both eyesight and speech were not there. And my eyesight came back the first, returned, and then the speech, I remember the frustration that I had, because as I was waking up, my brain was clear as a bell. And I remembered my point of impact of being injured, and that's all I knew. And I became very curious to know what happened in a battle in totality, because I did not know. And I was concerned about, I figured, well, as long as my brain is good, I'm going to recover. But the worst part was the right side of my body was paralyzed. Just like you see cases of people with a stroke, with one side of the body is paralyzed. The speech, after a while, was coming, but for quite a number of days, it was very frustrating because I wanted to say something. I knew what I wanted to say, and it was stuck somewhere in the mouth. I could not get it out. But I made an amazing recovery. Got out of bed. Of course, I was famished at the time. They gave me license to go to the kitchen anytime I wanted to get more food. Okay. 17 days after surgery, I was released from the hospital. I was able to walk. My head was all bandaged, and they sent me to what they call a rest home place where just be there and just they take care of you. All I did there is just get up in the morning, having nice breakfast and all that, and there's a nurse on site also. And then I spent a year at home recovering, and I was thinking, for me, it was all physical. So here I am, I'm at home, I cannot use the right hand, just hanging like this. And I'm saying to myself, what do I need to do so that I can go back to my unit, to go back and rejoin the unit? That's the objective. And I prepared a program for myself for rehab. And it turned out I did things that today are considered the latest technology, medical thinking in terms of how to recover from paralysis. Number one, that's not several things that I did. We had a large mirror in the entryway in the house. And so I said to myself, look, Amnon, my left side is healthy, the right is not. I'm going to have my my good side teach the right side. How I do it, I stand in front of a mirror and I begin to make movements with my arms and my hands, just like this, like even dancing, if you will. Okay, up and down, side like that. But with my eyes, I control it to be absolutely symmetrical. So I'm basically forcing the right side of my body to do things that with my eyes closed, I cannot do. But now I'm reestablishing things. So I would stand in front of a mirror and just go like this, like even swimming or just any form of motion, just free form as long as it's symmetrical. And I control it through the eyes. So I'm basically recreating brain cells to bring my right side of the body into action. And that worked beautifully. And you can see, I also decided that I was not going to become a lefty, which means I'm not going to start writing with my left hand. Also, I'm not going to eat with my left hand. So again, I said to myself, I'm going to work on it. So I took like a pen or pencil like here, just put it in the hand and closing the fingers on it the way it should be, putting it down, and I had a large sheet of paper and began to make lines. Just go draw lines and make circles, big squares, circles, but just move it, holding it properly, the way you should hold a pencil or a pen. And slowly I was making smaller forms and making large letters and then smaller letters and smaller letters and smaller letters. And finally I wrote a letter to my brother. That was the first letter that came out with my right hand. The same thing was with using the fork. I would say, you know, we hold the fork with the right hand. I insisted the same thing. So I'd sit at the meal table and get the fork in my hand and make sure that it, you know, hold it right and now have it and eat. And I'll never forget once for breakfast time. I'm eating breakfast. My mom sits right on to my side, you know. I mean, she's watching me like a hawk, right? I mean, by the way, I want to tell you, digress for a moment. I was so lucky to be able to come back to a home, to a family, to parents that gave me all the support I needed with love, both love and care. And so it gave me complete freedom to do what I needed and what I wanted to do. At the time, I didn't think about it. For me, it was, oh yeah, I'm returning home, that's all. But when I think back, I realize how privileged I was. And so here I'm eating breakfast and I grab some scrambled eggs with a fork and I stick it right into my cheek. And my mom begins, oh, Ma. I say, oh, come on, Mommy. Don't worry, I'll learn. I'm training. All right. Then another thing, you know, I played the violin all my life from age 6. And there's no way I could hold a bow. I mean, the hand was really bad. So I said, let's play an accordion. I bought an accordion because I figured that will give me, it will exercise my fingers, see? I bought an accordion and took lessons for a couple of months to learn the instrument. And then I would play every day, a couple of hours. And the whole idea was to use the right hand. And until today, forever, the only way I could play the accordion is by looking at my right hand. So I play and look at my right hand. If I don't look at him, I don't know where the hand is. Now, what's remaining basically, as I said, is the location that I cannot identify unless I look at it. And I don't have a feeling at the tips, at the hand. I really don't have a feeling. So if I didn't look at my hand and I look at my back and behind and I want to touch something, I can sort of identify rough stuff in big way, but I can really cannot make distinctions of space, sometimes textures and all that. So I have a restriction now with the right hand. That's it. And later on, we'll go to details. I had a plastic surgery, and I have a nice plastic plate put in here. And that's been with me for most of my life, of course. So that's the physical side of it. That's half of it. What I did not do is deal with my emotions. An interesting question is, why did I come to the United States to study? After about a year of rehab, I wanted to go to school, to move on to higher education. And my first thought was to go to the Technion in Haifa, a very fine technical institute. Well, my physician, my Dr. Ashkenazi, my surgeon, with whom I developed very close relationship. I was his #1 in the country as a soldier. And he used to invite me during the year to medical lectures that he was given. And he would invite me as a sample. Right? And I had such privilege when I wanted to see him. I go to the clinic, and the nurse would advise, or the receptionist would let him know that Amnon is here. He would stop everything and say, "Bring him in." You know, we became very close, and he was like a second father. And both my father and I, remember, had a meeting with him. We talked about what's next, and he said to my father, "Let him go." I'll never forget what you're saying. Let him go. When you're saying, get out of the country, get away, because he saw my emotional distress. He understood it, and he felt I needed to get away. And I'm thankful to him for that. For the rest of my life, I'm thankful to. I love him. I'm thankful to him. So, so I'm going to Berkeley. I went to Berkeley. That's where I met Lee.
Oh,
And that
was worth it.
that was another gift for me, a real gift. But I was living in total denial about, and I thought that I could get away with it, basically like all of us, all men. The idea of going to counseling or getting help, we say, who, me? I don't need it. I'm okay. I'm in charge. And that's how I conducted my life until I reach a crisis. Now, again, I'm thankful to Lee. Because of her, and together with her, we were going in the 60s, we were going to a whole bunch of workshops and things like that. So that was the beginning for me to sort of consider maybe, that there's more than just the physical side of it, physical side of me. But the truth is, I was having nightmares. I was having flashbacks from situation, not from the time when I was wounded. That's interesting. I was having flashbacks from much worse cases in earlier encounters. I was once caught on the ground in daylight in a field, in the middle of the field. I got Charlie horse. I got cramps in my legs and fell. I could not move. I fell on the ground. I could not move. And bullets were hitting the ground to my left, to my right. I could see a puff here, puff here, puff here, puff here. And I'm on the ground for about 20 minutes. And the bastards could not hit me. Two guys came to help me, and they both got hit when they came to me. And I did not get hit. How about that? So, the randomness of this thing is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So here I am having flashbacks all of a sudden, like Lee and I in the bedroom in the evening, standing there talking about before I even think of going to bed. And all of a sudden I get the shakes. And yeah, all of a sudden I feel the bullets flying around me. And I can hear it. I can hear the puff in the ground as the bullet hits the ground next to me. Puff, and you can see that little dust comes up. And things like that. And I had nightmares that were recurring also. And what fun, the net result of that was that I reached a point where it was consuming my energy. And I was reaching a point I could not recharge myself over a weekend between the end of Friday and beginning of Monday morning. And that was a signal for me that things were bad, and now I'm real trouble. So that's when I decided to go into counseling. And at that point, once I did it with vigor, if you will. I spent 1 year in counsel 2 days a week, and that's all I did that year. I didn't do anything else. That was enough, believe me. Believe me. I spent a whole year in counseling, and that saved my life. Steve, this is who I am today, that you know. It saved my life. It opened me up, and you know, so
this was in the late 60s you're talking about?
that was in the 80s already.
80s.
In the 80s, in the mid 80s, yes.
And I might add, Lee, what have you been married? 70 years? How long have you been married to Lee?
Oh, with Lee, in June, he'll be 70 years.
70 years.
Yes.
And she is a beautiful and remarkable lady in her own right. She's a psychologist. I can't imagine how helpful she must have been through this whole process.
Oh, I could not have made it without her.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so grateful to her. And I want to tell you, I mean, I love her so deeply. And I joke with her, I said, honey, I'm in love with a 90-year-old lady. You know, I'm deeply in love with a 90-year-old lady. She has been my life savior. No ifs and buts about it. Because she introduced me to the emotional side of life. The fact that it's not just functional, all the emotions and how important, and I finally recognized it. So that's when, and what happened, let me, beyond that, once, that was in 86, I believe. In 1988 was the 40th anniversary of the battle. And now, come back there. All the bodies that were collected there were buried in a common grave by the fortress that we were trying to capture. And it became a national monument. So we have a common grave for all my friends. And every year there's a major event there. And I decided to go back in 1988 to deliver a eulogy to my friends. And that was a breakout for me again. I went there to deliver a eulogy.
I want to just interrupt for a second here, lest I forget. If you go to the resource page and see Amnon's write-up, there is a link to a documentary called "I Will Not Forget This, My Friend." And I believe that was at that 40-year reunion. And the link is on Vimeo.com, and I urge you, it is a compelling document. And Amnon, you're one of the highlights of that documentary, and it is something I recommend everybody to take the time and watch. It's just amazing.
Well, let me tell you about the documentary. That's once I open up and I delivered the eulogy, a whole new chapter of life, my life opened, and also many of my friends took a free ride on it, and it's wonderful. So it's been helpful to others. And again, you know, they're showing it again and again in Israel. Right now, in fact, there's a fellow in the Galilee, in that area, who has a major website, and we've been in communications now for a long time, and he has a whole chapter there on me in the story. And now we have a museum at the site. And our temple has been there in the museum. And in the museum, there's a section that devoted right to telling my story. Yeah. And there's one article that they're showing of my clothing, and that's my hat. They are actually behind a glass. They have my Amnon ben Yehuda's hat.
Well, you're always been a dashing guy. I'm sure it was a very stylish hat.
But once I gave the eulogy, then one of the guys writes to me, and he says, Amnon, I was one of the guys who carried you down the mountain 40 years ago. And I could never, and he was now a professional video maker, okay, filmmaker. He said, all my life I wanted to make a documentary, and I could not touch the subject because of my own guilt feeling. But once I heard your eulogy, I feel relieved. I'm ready to make the documentary. And he said, well, will you come back to Israel next year and we will film everything? And I did. And that's what, pardon me. So the following year, I was in Israel, and on the 40th, we went to the spot. I stood on the spot where I was shot. And he interviewed me there. And there he pulls out a poem. And he said, Amnon, will you read it, please? Surprise me, son of a gun. Of course, I'll read it. It was a poem by Natan Alterman, who was the greatest poet of the era. He gave us this the inspiration to continue and fight and make it. And he was amazing. So he gave me the poem. He said, right, why don't you read it? So, okay, so I start to read it. Let me see if I can recite it in English for you. I will not forget this, my friend, how you carried me on your back, crawling mountains and valleys. I will never forget how you did not forsake me to die. When I hung to your neck, I must get it for you. It's my friend. Please put me down and run, because my head is pounding and I will not live to see the morning sun. Promise me, my friend, if the day comes, you come and tell him, yes, he was sort of a funny guy, but he died like a man and a hero. Till morning, my friend, I will breathe no more. But till morning, I will never forget. Well, I read this. I cried. I could not finish it. And we both broke down and cried. And this is on the film. And I came home. I was so affected by that poem, I ended up putting it to music. All right. So I recorded it and I called my friend, again, the producer, and I said, I got a gift for you, my friend. Listen. Okay. After he hears it, we get on the phone. He says to me, Amnon, you son of a bitch. Now I have to redo the film. And he actually renamed the film now. I will not forget this, my friend. and the music covers it, the film. Yeah.
It is beautiful. I mean, I've seen it. Um, I watched it Saturday. I think it was maybe the third time I've seen it, and I find it just compelling each time. It's there's something else you pick up from it as you talk about, as you were saying it. I sensed the others feeling a release of like a yoke that was around their necks. You can see it in the film, you can see it in the reactions, and especially when you were standing at the spot where you were shot and having that interview that you're talking about. That was, I mean, it is, to me, it was overwhelming. Having known you for so long and respected you for so long, and all of the miracles. I mean, meeting Lee, having, the only guy in the world who could conduct the surgery to give you a 0.05 chance of survival. I mean, these things just, um, you are blessed, and we have been blessed. Our whole community has been blessed.
Yeah. So now you ask me, why did I write the book? Let me tell you, I think the easiest way is for me to read it directly from the introduction here.
Okay.
Okay. It's just a few words. Very simple. It's one paragraph. I had a very clear purpose for writing this book, being eager to share my healing journey with other combat soldiers, regardless of which war they served in, who were still struggling secretly in silence with their demons. In many ways, we're all brothers. That's basic. This is what happens. We come back from traumatic experience that you never experienced in life, otherwise, in regular life. The great fear that you learn to control, the great fear at times, and you control it. I mean, when I think back, I said, my God, when I was in action, I was like a machine. The fear was not even an issue. But then, wow, the fear was before getting into action. And once the first shot was fired, become a machine. But then it haunts you later on. If you don't get a release for it, it haunts you later on in life. So you have to find a mechanism to release it. And we have, all these millions of people, soldiers, ex-soldiers in battle, who carry their secrets in their belly, and they take it with them to the grave. They never take it out. So I felt, the least I can do, if we saved one soul, one person, you save the whole world. I don't know, but showing the path. Yeah, I was a stubborn ass. I wouldn't even think of counseling for many, many years. It was not me. I was too strong for that. Too much of a man, or supposedly a man. And it would have killed me if I didn't take that step. I wouldn't be here today. And I feel blessed, real blessed. So I'm saying I'm going to show if it could help any of the guys who've been there. And hey, guys, there is a way out. There is a way to deal with it and create good life to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I wish as a young person, I would have had this.
Your audio is choppy.
Well, as a young person, I wish I would have known this. My father was in the Second World War,
Your
Uh,
father.
my father. Yes, I was born in 1948.
Okay.
When you were being shot at, I was coming out of my mother's womb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he had, he was wounded 3 times. He was in a hospital in serious condition on VE Day. And he said his big regret in the war was not being able to join he was in Paris, not being able to join the party that was going on that he could hear from his hospital bed. But he did get pecks on the cheek from all the nurses. But he never came to terms. He would not discuss his war experience. I know he would get up in the night,
Sweating. Yep.
sweats,
Yep. Yep.
and he died at 59. I think in
Oh my.
large measure from the wounds of the war did ultimately shorten his life,
Yeah.
and but he died carrying those demons with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 That's painful. Yeah. When I think of it, it's painful. And and I have all my buddies in Israel. Of course, so many of them are not here anymore. But some of them really learned to deal with it well. And
That's that again is another blessing. So I want you who are listening. There's information on how to acquire the book through Amazon on the resource page. And as much or more than that, I urge you to um, uh, go to the link and uh, do yourself a favor and listen to I Will Not Forget This, My Friend. It is, uh, you know, I, I look at, I've been teaching high school and I look at all these kids who are your age and I just try to, picture how circumstance would get them to the situation you were in. And it's just, to me, it is truly overwhelming. So I want to thank you for myself and all of us for the wonderful person you are and how much you contribute to not only our community, but to my Saturday morning. Amnon and I and a group of wonderful guys for 20 years have shared breakfast. It's a highlight of my week. We solve all the world's problems. If they would only listen to us, boy, would it be a great world, don't you think?
oh boy, of course.
Uh, so I thank you so much for your time. And, there are so many things that I would love to talk to you about on this podcast. You have such a wide range of interesting endeavors. So, uh, uh, from this podcast perspective, as they say, we'll see you down the road. Hopefully, not goodbye. I mean, 90 years, and you keep on ticking. There's a lot left for you to do, and I know you're going to do it. You're an amazing man.
Well, thank you, it's just dumb luck.
Well,
Let me be honest. It's luck, genes, and maintenance.
yeah, and hard work.
Maintenance is not just physical, emotional. That's what I'm talking about. It's all these things together. But luck is big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will
Thank
see
you.
you Saturday, and
Saturday for sure. Yes.
yeah, and you have a good week, and thank you so much. Uh, uh, it's rare that I find myself lacking words, but I just so appreciate you.
Well, Steve, it's been great having you in my life. You've been doing so much amazing good work, and that's it. I mean, the name of the game is to give. When I learn, I tell you, coming out with just give back. I can never give back enough.
Yeah, it's my mother who just recently passed away at 96. And she always taught you will find that it is much better to give than to get.
It's for sure. Always.
True words.
And, I mean, giving is good. Giving is good. Okay, I love you, Steve.
Love you too.
Okay,
And
see you on Saturday.
Saturday. Okay.
Okay, bye-bye, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.